In this video, I'm going to be dry curing this meat. This is Zero and Sentinel. Let's get into it. So, dry curing meat is a way to preserve it for a longer period of time. And I'm going to be using a technique that is relatively simple, easy to do, and honestly, the most expensive part of this whole thing will be the actual meat itself. Now, obviously, you want a decent cut of meat. Less fat though, because the more fat you have on it, you have to trim a lot of that off. And if there are too many layers of fat within the grains, that's going to end up cutting your meat down to significantly smaller pieces. So you want to try to find a lower fat content piece of meat. The next thing is you're going to need salt, not table salt, not the finely ground salt, and not iodized salt. And I'll explain to you why. This is natural sea salt. It's a bit coarser, it's not iodized, because the iodine in the salt can affect the flavor and the color and the overall texture of the meat when it's curing. Another thing that you'll need when you're doing dry curing is you'll need some type of nitrate. Now they do sell a pink salt, not pink Himalayan salt, is completely different, but a pink salt that is a curing salt because it contains nitrates in it. But if you can't find that, celery salt. Celery salt naturally has nitrite or nitrates in it that help convert into nitrites inside the meat. So using celery salt in combination with non-iodized salt, such as kosher salt or coarse sea salt, those are really the only three things that you need to get going. Now, the next thing that I'll show you is this is a mesh food and vegetable bag. After I've coated the meat, I'm going to be placing it into the bag and then placing it into this container. And I'll explain to you exactly what the Crayola is going on in here. Alright, so you get this package opened up. Now I'm putting it on this paper towel because what I want to do is just pat this dry. Get out some of the excess moisture that's already on it. Take the second one. I see you got a decent layer of fat. I think what I'll do is I'll just cut it from this end. And the primary purpose is when you start covering it in the salt is going to naturally absorb water. Well, the fat has a higher water content, but it takes longer for that fat to effectively get absorbed by the salt and get pulled out from the meat, and it slows the process down, especially a cut like this where it's on the whole back side of it. Alright, so I switched to a sharper knife, cut off that layer of fat. I'm going to probably cook that up and do something with it else totally separate from this. So now we've got the meat as it is. I'm going to be using the celery salt first. And what I want to do is just put a thin layer over it. Try to get the sides, the edges. And you flip it over, and you hit the other side. Now the celery salt is what is going to help convert the nitrates into nitrites in the meat. And what that is essentially for is any bacteria that's inside the meat, especially because you're trying to dry it, as the salt pulls that moisture out, the bacteria can still grow, they can still develop. So this helps mitigate that environment. It basically neutralizes it, so they have a hostile environment and they can't grow and spread on the inside. Because what can happen a lot of times, especially specifically for botulism, that bacteria can be prolific inside the meat. So even though the outside may look fine, it's growing on the inside. And so as you're aging it and everything visually seems to be well, it's actually rotting from the interior, which is another reason why you want to have low fat, because the fat takes longer for the moisture to come out from, which gives that fat the possibility to go rancid before the meat actually has a chance to cure. All right, so I'll get just a little bit more. Now with the curing salts that are made, it's a higher level of concentrated nitrates in it. So you have to measure out a very specific amount of that. Otherwise you run into a toxicity situation for yourself. Now, what I'm going to do is put this onto this plate, just so it's a little bit easier, and get my natural sea salts. And I take the sea salt, start coating. It's alright if I have some gaps, because I'm going to be moving it around, spreading it around. And the paper plate basically catches any of the spill off. Except for that spill off. Then I'll flip it over. Now with the dry curing process, different than a brining process, once it's thoroughly salted and I put it into the bag and I put it into that container, I'm going to be leaving it open in the air in the refrigerator. So it's going to be exposed to the cooler, drier air. There's going to be a more controllable amount of humidity, so it will stay balanced as it goes through the whole curing process. By having it elevated, and I will show you what I'm talking about, I want to have better air circulation all the way around the meat, moving underneath it as well as on top of it. If you seal it up in a container, effectively speaking, only the air that's in there, and it's not really going to circulate the same way as actual airflow moving inside a fridge. Even when the door is closed, the compressors are running and it's blowing, so it's still actually moving the air. If I seal it off and bacteria begins to grow, at a certain point the oxygen level is going to change in the container, and you can run into a situation where there is basically low oxygen, high bacterial count, and that botulism is capable of growing and spreading in a non-oxygenated environment. That's what makes it basically spread so fast, is it gets closed in there and the oxygen disappears, and that's when it starts to grow. And when you brine, you'd salt it, put it into a container, the moisture starts getting pulled off from it, and of course that moisture is a liquid, a salty liquid that starts to pool up at the bottom of the container. If I left this sitting on this paper plate, after a while the moisture that gets pulled out is going to start to seep out and soak into the paper plate and start to pool up around it, and then it's sitting inside a salty brine, which is now I have to flip it over, let the top side air out, and then the bottom side's going to get wet, and you'd have to rotate multiple times. My plan, as all plans are, is to take this container, and what I've done is I took 8 flexible drinking straws. And I just bent 4 of them, connected them into a figure 8, and then laid the other 4 across. I'm going to take a portion of this salt, line it down, spread it through the bottom so it's underneath it everything, then place the meat on top of that. It acts like a small drying rack because I did not have a rack that would fit this size or anything larger. It would be unnecessary for this one piece of meat. So with salt in the bottom to help pull moisture out from the actual steak itself, and as the brine basically drips out from pulling the moisture, it'll collect into the bottom and that'll get soaked into there. So there's less chance of it sloshing around in moisture, but it will still allow air circulation through the entire container because I won't have the lid on it. And that's why I'll have the meat inside this. So I'm not covering it with a thicker cloth like a towel or anything, even paper towels where it might obstruct the airflow. This will allow the airflow to pass through and still keep the meat from getting jostled around and sloshing about. And it's in the refrigerator. You can end up bumping it by accident, and the last thing you want is a bunch of meat juices splashing all over the place. Now, since I'm dry curing this for long preservation versus a short brine or a short dry cure for immediate cooking, there's difference in the time period. This is going to sit in the refrigerator for pretty much 28 days before I take it out and actually cut into it. And at that point, it'll be hopefully at that stage where I can cut into it and then cook it up, and it might be a little salty, but it'll still be effectively good, and that's what I'm hoping for. All right, so take the meat, lay it down. It's not too bad. A little bit of salt more on the top. Ooh. And I totally forgot to put it in the bag. If it had been a snake, it'd have bit me. Alright, so pull it back out. Yes, I am a professional culinary martial artist. Do not try this at home. Or actually, do what you want at home. It's your home, your choice. Alright, so now, as I said before, I've got the beef inside the bag, resting pretty much right on top of the straws with the salt in the bottom. So that's going to allow air circulation within the refrigerator, maintaining the climate, because you can set the climate controls on there. And then I can obviously keep an eye on it as things go along to see how it does. And the key factors are visually and also olfactory, basically looking at it and smelling it. If it's smelling off, if it's basically smelling like meat that's gone a little bad, then that's on me. I didn't add enough salt and get it in there properly. If it looks like it's turning a little bit funny, keeping an eye on it, because it's still open and exposed. It's been out of the package. It's open and exposed to air. There is going to be some oxidation. That's a natural process. And the salts will start to pull moisture out, and that's going to change the look of it, the texture of it as it gets cured. Hopefully, things go well. It'll crust up at the right kind of rate where it looks harder, firmer, and it'll feel that to the touch. But then cutting into it, the moisture's been pulled out, the celery salt and the sea salt have done their thing, and it'll have a nice texture on the inside. Then at that point, all I have to do is heat up a pan, butter, some other seasonings, throw it in, and be good to go. And I am running out of room to try stuff. That's all I have to do for now. So 28 days from now, I'll have a second video, and either it'll be a success and hey, thumbs up, or I turn into the Walking Dead after being infected by the virus that's growing within the meat. Anyway, that's it for now. Check out this video that hopefully YouTube will suggest of mine for you to watch next, and I'll catch you in the next one.